Hi everybody, Tex-Mex here. Thanks for joining me for another video. Today we're taking a look at the Henry lever action 22 Magnum. This is the basic standard lever action. They make a lot of different 22 Magnum ones. Obviously they make the Golden Boys and things of that sort, but they make octagon barrels, and I think they have one called the Field. And this is just the plain Jane 22 Magnum lever action with a rounded barrel. For those of you who have watched my other videos, you're probably asking yourself, hey, didn't you have a scope on that rifle? And that's a different rifle. That's the one my father-in-law took. I ended up just letting him keep it because he loves that rifle and he hunts with it all the time. So I hate to say it, but I bought another one. They went on sale at some point and I thought, you know, I really wanted that, or I really liked that 22 Magnum. So I'm going to get one for myself again, and I'm not going to put a scope in it. I'm going to try open sights. Now the original sights that the Henry come with, they're not great sights. That's one thing I will say about the standard sights on the Henry. They're kind of blocky. So the front sight, as you can see here, is just basically a square, well, a rectangle, I should say, not a square. So it doesn't have a bead on top or anything of that sort, you know, the brass beads like a lot of classic lever actions have. It's just basically a rectangular post. And the rear sight as well, it's not really a buckhorn. It's sort of in the, shall we say, in the spirit of a buckhorn, but it's just basically a little notched rear sight. And I wanted to switch them out. Originally I thought I'd switch out to the HiViz sights, and that's what I did. So I bought some HiViz sights because I've put those on other rifles and they really do help. And before we continue, I'd really like to sight this in for this Federal 50 grain 22 Magnum, because that's what I'd like to be shooting out of this for hunting small game. But I also brought some 40 grain CCI. This is the hollow point, just to see where it's hitting, because this is sighting this rifle in. This rifle has not been sighted in, and I've put new sights on it, so it's certainly going to take a lot of sighting in. Now, one thing I'd like to say is that Henry did change this model a little bit. One way you can see that is in the front of the barrel where the front sight is. The original ones kind of had a band. It looked like a barrel band here at the front sight. Now that band is gone. You can see there's just kind of a little retainer here on the magazine tube and a spacer between it and the front barrel, but there's no barrel band there at the front anymore. So that's one way you can see whether or not you have the newer version or the older version of this 22 Magnum. And that will make a difference if you're buying replacement sights, because the type of sights it takes on the front are different from those older models to these newer models. So just, you know, something to be aware of in case you are considering changing out your sights. So as you can see, it does have the front HiViz sight. It's got the green little fiber optic in there. It's nice and bright. I like it a lot. But on the back, I put a Skinner sight, and it's the Skinner peep sight. Now Skinner makes sights that you can actually wedge into the dovetail, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get as much distance between the front sight so I could get a long sight radius on this rifle. So I just put a little block into the rear sight dovetail there. I mean, I could have left it open. I guess you run the risk of potentially harming your dovetail, so I did buy this from Skinner as well, just to replace that because I took out the rear sight. And to be fair, I originally tried the HiViz rear sight, but I didn't like it either. And the front sight's great. I really like it because it is round. That kind of gives me the old feeling of shooting with a bead. However, the rear sight on the HiViz, I will give a complaint. It's blocky and short, so I just didn't like it. I'm going to show it right now, and as you can see here, you see it's kind of short and blocky. It does have the fiber optics in it as well, which is nice, but it's just, I just didn't like this rear sight. It's really narrow, it's kind of blocky, and it's not that I didn't like the look, I just didn't like how the sight's set up. So that's when I figured, you know what, I'm going to keep the front HiViz, but on the rear I'm going to put a Skinner. And because I put a Skinner on my Marlin 39A, and it really helped me tighten the groups up a bit. So I'm hoping with the HiViz front sight giving me a better front sight picture and the Skinner rear sight, I'll be able to get decent accuracy out of this rifle. So what I'm going to try to do is sight this rifle in at 50 yards. I have my target set up down there at 50 yards. And I haven't even put this on paper yet, so I'll probably fire a few rounds just to see where I'm hitting before I try to start hitting targets at 50 yards, because 50 yards is kind of far if you haven't at least slightly sighted in your rifle, whether it's open sights or a scope, before you're trying to really do the fine-tuning of the point of impact compared to your point of aim. So I'm going to go ahead and load in a few rounds just to see where I'm hitting on paper, and then from there we'll start trying to get this sucker sighted in. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't monkeyed with the sight yet. I had a bad issue. I fired 5 rounds of the Federal 50 grain and 5 rounds of the Maxi-Mag 40 grain, and it looked like it was keyholing the 50 grain. I couldn't tell with the 40 grain. Now that's an issue for those of you that don't know what keyholing is. It means that the bullet is tumbling. It's not flying, you know, just rotating and flying straight like it should be. It's tumbling in the air. So when it hits the target, it hits it sideways. The bullet isn't hitting it front ways, it's hitting it on its side and leaving a long hole, which looks like a keyhole. Hence the keyhole term. But and I'll show you that here. I'll take a picture of it and put it up right here so you can see what I'm talking about. It's also hitting kind of high. I got closer to fire those first rounds because I didn't even think I'd be on paper at 50 yards. Unfortunately, I don't think I can lower the sight anymore. The Skinner sight, it's a little tall in the rear, and because of that, they do sell other front sights that you can use to replace the factory front sight so that you can get a different elevation on it and be able to hit where you need to. I was really hoping I could use this combination of the Skinner and the HiViz front sight, but I'm not sure it's going to work. I'm going to fire 5 rounds here at 50 yards with the Federal, see if it even hits on the paper, and if it does, see if it's keyholing at 50 yards. Now these are the first rounds I have fired out of this rifle, so maybe it's just there's a burr in there or something that's working its way out. At this point it's seen 10 rounds, so it hasn't seen much at all. If you can say anything about Henry is that they have amazing customer service. So if it's an issue with the rifle, it's not a problem. I'll send it in and I'm sure they'll take care of it. If it's an issue with the ammunition, it's possible. I'd be somewhat surprised because the other Henry 22 Magnum that is now my father-in-law's shot that ammunition very well. So I'd be surprised that this one for some reason just hates it so much that it's keyholing with it. But let's see. Let me fire 5 rounds here 50 yards, see if we even hit the paper, and if we do, what kind of pattern we are getting. So once again, we're shooting this Federal small game 50 grain. 50 yards. Now, since I'm not using a scope, I can't see if I'm hitting or where I'm hitting, so I'm just going to fire the 5 rounds and then head down to my target. I don't think I'm hitting, but it's possible. I cannot see anything from this distance. And one more to make 5. Okay, let's go take a look at our target. So here we are at our target, and well, first issue is we're hitting very, very high, and I don't think I can lower those sights anymore. So it may just be an issue that that Skinner sight will not work with the HiViz front sight, which is unfortunate. If it is what it is, then I'll just have to switch out that front sight. But it looks like I'm still keyholing. That looks like a keyhole hit there, and so does that there. Although that could be 2 rounds. I'll have to wait until I go back and look at the camera to see if I caught those. I may have only caught these here and not these because they're a little higher up. But that looks like a keyhole. So it's either not really liking this Federal 50 grain for some reason, or the rifle's got an issue. So let me try this again. I'm going to shoot the CCI 40 grain and see how it does. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just fired the 5 rounds of the 40 grain at 50 yards, and I didn't even hit on the target anywhere, and I aimed lower. I ended up putting my sight down here. I think these are the hits up here, and I've got 1, 2, 3, and they're really far away. So I'm not going to show that shooting session because I didn't hit anything anyway, and this is hitting really, really poorly. Now it could be my eyesight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get closer. I'm going to get at about 20 yards and try this again with the 40 grain. And if I can't even get on paper, or if the groups are horrible, then I'm going to say it's possibly the rifle. Maybe there's an issue with the bore or the chamber. But yeah, these keyholing is very concerning. And if it can't even group the 40 grain either, then there's a problem with this Henry, and it's going to need to go back. And here we are at 25 yards. I've loaded it with 5 rounds, or 5 more rounds, I should say, of this Maxi-Mag hollow point. Now, I did remember something. I misspoke earlier. These aren't the first rounds I fired through this. I originally installed the HiViz front and rear sight and took it out shooting. This was a couple of months ago, and it started drizzling on me, so I cut my shoot short. I wasn't videoing it. I just wanted to see how well those HiViz sights did, and I was having an issue sighting it in at that time. And now I'm thinking it may have been the rifle, not the sights. That being said, I still don't like that HiViz rear sight. It's just super blocky, but it may be an issue with this rifle. It may have to go back to Henry. So let's fire these 5 rounds at 25 yards and see if we can even hit the paper. I don't see it hitting. Let's get out the 5th shot. Okay, that's 5. Let's go take a look and see if we even hit the target. And here we are at our target. So I did hit the target, and the good news is it doesn't look like it was keyholing it. It looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I had to guess, and the video will show. But the good news is it's not keyholing, but it is very high and to the left. So unfortunately, that means that my front sight's not going to work for this. I am going to need a taller front sight for this Skinner sight to be effective for me. Not a bad little group, so that's, I mean, it was 25 yards, so actually it's not a great group. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should send it back to Henry and tell him, hey, it's keyholing some of the ammunition, or if I just need to put some more rounds through it, and maybe I should change my front sight first and then try that before I decide to send the whole rifle back to Henry to see if they can figure this out, because I still am concerned about the keyholing it did with the 50 grain, but it may just be that it doesn't like that ammunition. It doesn't look like it keyholed the 40 grain, but it's just shooting it very high to the left and not particularly accurately. But that's how it is. Some days you come out shooting and you do great, and other days you find out you have a problem, and today I have a problem. But anyway, y'all, thanks for joining me for this somewhat frustrating shoot. I hope you're doing great, staying safe, and I'll see you in the next video.